Hi everyone, happy Friday. I'm hopping on today to do a little live with you guys. I'm going to be answering any questions you have about stress and IBS. So the gut-brain connection, that's what I'm all about. And we're going to be diving into a lot of really interesting details today. A lot of this is covered in the course that I am recently started launching. So if you're interested in more info on that, just send me a separate DM. I'm not really going to go into that today. But I do want to talk about stress because, oh my God, my hair is doing this weird thing. I want to talk about stress because obviously we're all very overwhelmed and stressed, and this last year has been incredibly stressful for all of us. And, it doesn't just affect our brain function, although we know that's the biggest thing we notice, right? And it's directly going to impact our mental health, our memory, our ability to focus and show up at work. But it's also going to impact our gut health and our health in general. So whether we realize it or not, I see a lot of people coming to me that have been struggling with gut health issues, and or clients that I've been working with, that maybe prior to COVID, they were doing really well. And then all of a sudden with, all of this stress, they're having these gut flare-ups. And it's really frustrating, especially for those of you who have done a lot of gut healing already. You've made so much progress. You feel like you're doing everything right. You're eating well. You're taking your supplements. You're working out, doing all these healthy things, but you're still having these gut flare-ups, right? So either you're struggling with poop problems, so diarrhea, constipation, or maybe you're struggling with lots of excess bloating and gas, or maybe you feel like you're reacting to more foods lately, you're having more heartburn and upper GI, like indigestion after a meal. Whatever that is for you, I want you to know that it's totally normal for these things to get worse when you are chronically stressed, and that there is a lot we can do about it. So typically when I see people struggling with these issues in clinic, they're wanting me to fix them, right? So they want me to give them a supplement or tell them to change their diet or do something where they can feel better immediately. Unfortunately, that's not the reality for most people. And we know that because there's such a big role of your mindset and your stress in these gut issues, until we work on that aspect and do things to actively reduce the stress hormones like cortisol, and put our bodies into a rest and digest state. So when we talk about the nervous system, we talk about the two different states. So the sympathetic nervous system is activated when we are in a stress response. So our heart gets racing, we might get sweaty. It's our body's way of getting ready to flee from danger, right? So in prehistoric times, that would mean running from a dinosaur or a saber-toothed tiger or something. Hi, Wendy. But in modern days, that can be anything, right? So we get the stress response from work or from kids or whatever it is. We're getting that sympathetic response where our body's kicking into high gear, releasing stress hormones like cortisol. And in that state, our digestion actually shuts down, unfortunately. So when we're chronically in that state, which most of us are these days, everything shuts down because your body's main priority at that point is survival, right? Your body says, okay, nothing else matters. I have to just run for my life right now. So everything shuts down, and your digestion, all of your resources, your energy and blood flow is diverted to your extremities. So your legs and your arms and everything that you need to run and save yourself. But unfortunately in our modern world, that's not what we need to be doing, right? So that's shutting everything down. So we're going to talk about what exactly is happening on the gut level when the stress response kicks in. But I talked about that one phase of the nervous system. The other phase is the parasympathetic, or the rest and digest response. So that's where we want to be ideally in order to optimize digestion, right? But how many of us can say that we spend a great deal of our days in that mode? Most of us don't, unless we're on vacation, right? I'm not saying we have to avoid stress. It's literally impossible in our lives. But what we need to do is add more things to our daily routines that's going to help us manage that stress and shift ourselves into more of that parasympathetic mode, even if it's temporary, right? Maybe you shift yourself into this mode over lunch. So you had a stressful morning. Over lunch, you go for a walk and you do some deep breathing. And then, you get into this rest and digest parasympathetic mode. And then in the afternoon, something stressful happens at work and you're back into sympathetic mode. That's okay. It's going to happen, right? But then once you're done work and you're home, well, most of you are probably working from home, but once you're done work and that's put away, and now you're into evening mode, you have to do something to tell your body that it's okay to relax now. It's okay to kick into this rest and digest mode. So whatever that looks like for you, right? It's different for everyone, whether that's going for a walk or doing some stretching or yoga or meditation, even just reading a book, having a calming tea. But we're not going to focus on that stuff today because I hope you're already, doing these self-care activities. We're going to talk about exactly what happens in the gut when we're in this sympathetic stress response constantly, right? So this is the reason we're having some of these increase in digestive symptoms lately. So number one is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs all through your body. It's called the Great Wanderer because it goes everywhere, but it especially connects your brain and your gut. And so it's a bidirectional kind of superhighway, such that when you're really stressed, it's going to be sending signals to your gut that things are not okay. And that's going to impact things like peristalsis, which is the movement or the contractions of your intestines to help move food along and digest your food. The other thing that it does is if your vagus nerve is underactive because you're not kicking into that parasympathetic mode often enough and relaxing, it's going to delay your gastric emptying, which means that food is going to sit in your stomach much longer than it would have if you weren't in that stress mode, okay? So why is that a problem? That's a problem because when things are sitting in there longer, it's fermenting, allowing more bacteria to grow. We don't want a slow transit time. We want things to be moving through our system at a good pace. Obviously not too fast, that would be diarrhea. And we will talk about that and how the vagus nerve is part of the nervous system as well as the enteric nervous system, which is in the gut. And, these things are connected, but I want you to know that we need to talk about motility today. That's the number one thing that people deal with, especially under times of stress, right? Many of us get constipated. I'm just going to take my sweater off because I am warm. Constipation. So people think, I'm constipated. What's the big deal? It is a big deal because the longer food sits in there, the more bacteria is going to be fermenting it and creating more of this dysbiosis. We know dysbiosis means an imbalance or overgrowth of bacteria in your gut, and that contributes to chronic digestive symptoms and inflammation, all kinds of problems. So we have to be pooping at least once a day, ideally 2 times or more. And if you are, even if it's once a day, but you're really struggling to go with constipation, that's a sign that something else is going on. So we won't dive into all the causes of constipation today, but know that stress can be a big factor there. And one of the reasons is because your vagus nerve is not being stimulated properly. So the other things that happen when you are stressed. So one of them is your what do you call them? Neurotransmitters. Your neurotransmitters are the chemicals in your brain that affect literally everything, including your mental health and your ability to focus, but they also directly impact your gut health, especially serotonin. And so when we're chronically stressed, our brain and our gut, where these hormones are made, they can't make them in the proper amounts, right? So you're not going to have proper levels of things like serotonin, which is one of the happy hormones, to do the things it needs to do. And not only does serotonin, obviously we need it to be happy and have our happy mood, but it also directly impacts the motility in your gut. So when you're low in serotonin, you're more likely to have slow motility and have constipation. And interestingly, they think it's about 50-50. So about 50% of your serotonin is made in your gut and 50% is made in your brain. And they don't actually kind of directly interact. So the gut and the brain are connected and do impact each other for mental health and various other things. But we know that the serotonin that is made in the gut stays in the gut to be used for that purpose. So several purposes, including that motility factor. So again, if that motility is down because of the vagus nerve sending signals to the gut that things are not okay, but it can also do diarrhea for that purpose, or the motility is down because it's delaying gastric emptying in your stomach, or it's because you don't have enough serotonin being made. And interestingly, that goes both ways, right? So If you have the wrong bacteria, which most people do with dysbiosis and IBS, you're going to have more inflammatory bacteria and microbes than the good guys. You're not going to be making enough of that serotonin to begin with. And then on top of that, when you get stressed, your body's even further impaired and further can't make any serotonin, right? So now you've really got a deficiency, and you're going to end up with gut issues like constipation and pain. So there's a lot of pain in people that deal with IBS as well as IBD. And there's many reasons for that, but one of them is due to the enteric nervous system. So I mentioned that earlier. And the enteric nervous system is in your gut, and it controls a ton of different functions. We're not going to get into the intricacies of it, but I want you to know that there's two main branches. One of them is specifically concerned with motility, which we just talked about, and you can see how it's a little bit complicated, right? So the vagus nerve, the enteric nervous system, the neurotransmitters, all of these things are impacting your motility, or how fast things are moving through, as does your thyroid, but we won't get into that. And then there's the other branch that impacts the absorption and the secretory functions in your gut. So we're talking about like enzymes and mucus and absorption and digestion and all of these biochemical pathways that allow us to absorb and digest our food. And also has to do with, water homeostasis and keeping things the right, keeping the balance in your gut, right? So in your large intestine, water is reabsorbed to help keep the stool moist and allow you to have, easy to pass stools. But when that is out of whack and your secretory and digestive functions based on your enteric nervous system function is not working properly, you're going to end up with either constipation and or diarrhea. So if too much water is absorbed, you're going to get diarrhea, too little, constipation. And so those are the two main branches of the enteric nervous system. It's kind of a new discovery in the last little while that is still being worked out as to how it's all connected with the central nervous system. But we do know that there's a huge connection in the gut with the brain through this enteric nervous system. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, especially when we're stressed. So one of the reasons we get sick when we're stressed, and this is very relevant living in the pandemic that we are in, one of the reasons we get sick is when we are stressed chronically, our immune system tanks. We know that, but why, right? One of the biggest reasons is our mucosal immunity in your gut. So when we are chronically stressed, we are more prone to infections or dysbiosis, these bacterial imbalances in the gut. And we know that up to 70% of our immune system resides in the gut. So these bacteria in there are directly interacting with your immune system in your gut lining and through there. And it's either saying, okay, we need to trigger an immune response, or we need to dampen the immune response based on whatever is going on. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Bridget. Let me know if you have questions as we go along. We're talking about how stress is impacting gut health, and not necessarily only IBS, but chronic digestive symptoms in general. So far we've touched on how it impacts our brain chemistry and our neurotransmitters in general. We've talked about the role of motility and how it can, stress can slow things down. And we talked about, right now we've been talking about mucosal immunity, so immunity in your gut, the chronic stress that can lead to lowered immunity. And we often see this on stool tests. So people that have been, burnt out and chronically stressed for a long time often have very low IgA, and that's a mucosal immunity marker that tells us that the immune system in the gut is not working properly. And these people often have very severe dysbiosis, so some kind of infection or overgrowth or imbalance of microbes in their gut because their immune system is so low. And we know, like I was just saying, that these microbes are directly interacting with the gut to either trigger an immune response or dampen an immune response. And it can trigger inflammatory immune chemicals. And that's why some people have a lot of allergies and histamine problems and inflammation and pain. So it can trigger that cascade, or it can trigger immune molecules that kind of dampen that response, right? So depending on what microbes you have in there, it's pretty interesting stuff. But I hope that's one of the things that motivates you to really take care of your gut, especially the world we're living in right now. People that have healthy guts have much better immunity. And okay, so we're going to talk about the MMC. So for those of you who haven't heard of it, the MMC is the migrating motor complex. So that exists in your gut, in your small intestine, and that is directly connected to something called SIBO, which I've talked about a lot. So that stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Now, those of us who have SIBO tend to have more upper gut problems, so indigestion, heartburn, bloating, often goes hand in hand with things like food allergies and brain fog and fatigue as well, because we're not absorbing things, we're deficient in things because our small intestine is where absorption takes place. So if we have a bacterial overgrowth in there, our body can't do what it needs to do, and we're not going to be absorbing things properly. Now, one of the things that can trigger this SIBO to develop, so there's many factors, including low stomach acid, use of antacids or antibiotics, burnout and adrenal fatigue, so many factors. But one of them is issues with your MMC, so your migrating motor complex. And we know that there's many things that can go wrong that can trigger a malfunction here. So first off, let's start by talking about what it does. It's kind of this cleansing wave that goes through the small intestine, specifically in between meals, to help move things along and kind of clean up any debris and heal up the gut and keep it nice and healthy. So that's why, in a healthy functioning gut, we have this happening frequently throughout the day, but it needs to happen between meals. So there needs to be no food there to allow the migrating motor complex to really move things through, kind of, it's like a street sweeper, right? It's coming through, it's cleaning up debris, it's healing things up. But that needs to happen between meals. So this is why people with chronic gut issues, it's really recommended that we don't do a lot of snacking between meals, ideally, because we need to allow that MMC some time to do its thing, right? It needs to be able to sweep through and clean stuff up in between meals. Now, when we're chronically stressed, that's going to impact the ability of the MMC to do its job. It's not going to be able to do that cleaning and that healing between meals. So that's one of the reasons that we're going to have gut dysfunction. So when that's not happening, again, we're not getting that cleanup, we're getting slower motility, things are not getting cleared out and healed up on a regular basis, and that can just cause all kinds of inflammation and possibly constipation. Interestingly, I'll just say as a side note, while this is not directly connected to stress, but we know that anyone that gets damage to the MMC, so that can actually happen through a virus like mono, it can happen through food poisoning. Those are the two main ones, food poisoning or traveler's diarrhea. Certain types of bacteria can actually damage your migrating motor complex in your small intestine and cause problems long term until that gets healed up. So it's pretty crazy stuff. I'm not going to go into any more detail on that today, but if you have questions, do let me know. Some of that stuff I'm just diving into myself, so I don't know all of the intricacies of it, but know that if you've ever had an episode like that, so a severe viral infection like mono, which is Epstein-Barr, or you have an autoimmune disease, you've had severe food poisoning or traveler's diarrhea, you definitely should get that looked into with a naturopath and do some testing. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, let's do stomach acid. Then we'll talk about carb cravings and snacking. We're also going to talk about sleep, and I think those are the last ones. So as we go along, do feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. So I'm going to talk about stomach acid. I've talked about this quite a bit in my posts as well, but I do have to hammer this home because it's so very important, especially in those of you who have been told by your doctor that you need to take an antacid and that you probably need to stay on that antacid for life. So I'll share a little bit of my story here. I had chronic heartburn for at least a decade. I was put on antacids and I was having severe heartburn, acid reflux, nothing helped. I was having Gaviscon like constantly, Zantac, I was doing all the things, avoiding all the trigger foods, but nothing was helping. And so my doctor had told me to go on this antacid, and it helped a little bit, but the longer I was on it, and I did end up staying on for at least 5 years or more. And side note here, those antacids were developed to be used to heal ulcers. And there's actually a black box warning on them that says they're not supposed to be used for more than 6 weeks to heal ulcers. Obviously, if you had a very severe ulcer or some other severe condition, then you would need to stay on to heal it, especially if they saw in imaging that there was a lot of, inflammation and illness in your gut. But for those of us who are taking it for heartburn, it's not supposed to be a long-term thing. One of the reasons being that it's linked to many other issues such as osteoporosis, because you're not absorbing anything when you're on it. We need our stomach acid not only to digest and absorb our food, but it is one of the most biggest protective barriers in our gut to keep us from getting sick from microbes coming into our body, right? So say we ate something that was kind of bad, had some weird bacteria on it. Ideally, our stomach acid is there to kill that off and prevent it from getting any further into the body. Well, we don't have that stomach acid, and that can be not only just for those of us on antacids, but those of us who are chronically stressed or have other conditions such as autoimmune diseases, and we have just low stomach acid in general, right? So you may not even know you have low stomach acid. Some of the signs include stuff like heartburn, because you need that acid there to trigger your sphincter here between your esophagus and your stomach to actually stay closed. So you may feel like you don't actually have that burning. And a lot of people tell me that, like, I have this sensation, but it doesn't actually feel like a heartburn. It's not burning per se. And that's because, yes, you do have food and stuff coming up, but because your stomach acid is so low, it doesn't actually feel like burning. It feels more like just food sitting in your esophagus or your throat, right? And that's not good either. That's more of a silent reflux. And the reason, and what we need to do there is actually increase your stomach acid and your digestive enzymes and your digestive power in general in order for you to not have those symptoms and also digest your food. So I digress. Being on those antacids and or having low stomach acid for whatever reason, especially long-term, predisposes you to having dysbiosis anywhere in the gut, so this bacterial imbalance, but especially having SIBO, so this small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And when we have that, that is going to increase our risk of having complicated digestive issues in the long term, right? So really hard to treat. But what I'm trying to say is that the stress itself, having that chronic stress, is turning off your stomach acid production. Like we talked about at the beginning, your body doesn't care. When you're chronically stressed, it prioritizes running and saving yourself, like all the survival things. So moving your arms and legs, running from danger. It doesn't care about digestion. Everything shuts down. No stomach acid produced. Enzymes aren't produced. Nothing is happening. That's why we have to shift our body from that stress response mode into the rest and digest mode in order to be able to produce things like stomach acid in adequate amounts. There's many other factors too that go into that, but for today we're going to just remember that stress is stopping you from producing stomach acid, and that is creating the ability of your body to get this dysbiosis, this bacterial imbalance, right? Because bacteria love warm, moist, dark places with food sources, and guess what? That is your gut, especially when you have low stomach acid. And again, I'll just reiterate, we're not really supposed to have that much bacteria in our upper gut, right? Most of our microbes are supposed to be in our lower gut, in our large intestine. Those of us who have chronic constipation and or there's something called the ileocecal valve, if that's not working properly, bacteria are coming up from your large intestine to your small intestine, or they're coming down from your food and other sources. And when you have that low stomach acid, and now everything's growing out of control in your small intestine. So what I want to make clear is that stress is allowing all of this to happen by reducing your stomach acid, your bile, your motility, you're becoming constipated, and just in general, it's allowing the growth of bad bacteria. Now, obviously, there's two other main factors we really have to touch on. Two, not like this. One is when we are stressed, and we all know this, and I had to touch on this stress eating and emotional eating. So I am not immune. I've been having more chocolate and more treats in the last year or so than I used to. But we have to understand that obviously these indulgent foods, these carbs, simple carbs and excess sugars are feeding the bad bacteria, right? They're feeding the bacteria that are causing these gut symptoms, whether it's constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, whatever it is, you're feeding the bad guys and it's going to make it worse. So We have to do something that is going to allow us to have less cravings and less indulgences in general, then so that we're not feeding the bad guys all the time. Now, I'm very much someone who's of the camp that everything should be eaten in moderation, and yes, you should enjoy food, but again, it's moderation, right? We can't be going all week telling ourselves, you know, I'm fine, I don't need to slow down, I'm too busy to slow down, and I'm eating clean, I'm doing good, like I'm eating salads for lunch every day, I don't need sugar, I'm good. And then come the weekend, you've been so stressed and busy all week and eating so clean, what happens? You sit down to have maybe a bowl of chips, or maybe, you know, one cookie is your plan, and you end up having the whole bag of chips or a whole box of cookies. And that is not going to be conducive to long-term gut health, right? First of all, overeating, eating a lot in one sitting, is really, really hard on the digestive system, especially if you have pre-existing gut issues. Secondly, you're eating the foods like we just discussed. They're going to be feeding the bad bacteria and worsening your gut symptoms, right? So I want you to listen to your body going forward. First of all, do more things that allow you to relax without having to turn to food, right? So whether that's going for a walk after work, some kind of exercise, reading a book, whatever it is for you, because the more relaxed you are, the less likely you are to stress or emotionally eat, right? And the other thing here is sleep. So when we are chronically stressed, it's going to impact our sleep. I'm sure many of you, myself included, have struggled with more insomnia in the past year than you used to have. And we know that our body has what's called a circadian rhythm. So stress hormones like cortisol, we do produce them all the time, and we need them in certain amounts and in certain patterns. It's supposed to be highest in the morning because these stress hormones like cortisol are stimulating. It's supposed to be high in the morning and then gradually decline throughout the day and be lowest at night, and that allows us to fall asleep. But if we are chronically stressed over a long period of time, that tends to shift. So the pattern shifts where we end up with low cortisol in the morning. So we're super tired. We can't wake up without 3 cups of coffee. And then it gradually increases throughout the day. And these are people who are getting second winds in the evening, which I have definitely done. You get that second wind, and now you're wired and your cortisol is peaking later at night, and now you can't fall asleep, right? You're thinking, crap, it's 10:30, I have to get to bed for work tomorrow, but I'm just wired. I'm laying here wired. It's because your cortisol pattern has now shifted from that chronic stress, and now you're low all day and higher at night. So these people may find melatonin helpful, but we don't want to be taking things like melatonin or sedatives long term, right? The solution is to get your body back in balance by reducing your stress and doing things like exercise during the day to not only reduce your stress, but allow you to fall asleep at a decent time and create that healthy pattern, that healthy cycle, right? If you need help with that and you're really struggling with sleep or your energy levels, there's a lot we can do with supplements and dietary changes to support these things, because there's only so much you can do with, you know, your lifestyle and DIYing it. So do let me know if you need help there. But I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. So we talked about how stress is impacting your gut. So it's from your vagus nerve. So that is running from your gut to your brain. It's a super highway that's bidirectional, sending signals. You know, when you're stressed, things are not okay. We're sending that signal to the gut saying things are not okay. And that's going to cause things like constipation and cramping and motility issues. We talked about your neurotransmitters getting dysregulated. So stress is impacting your gut and your brain's ability to build things like serotonin. And the serotonin that's in your gut actually plays a role of motility. So it's keeping things moving along properly. We talked about how, you know, if we're not having proper motility and going, having a bowel movement at least once a day and things are backing up, we're going to have worse gut issues and more dysbiosis, because it's allowing more time for the bacteria to ferment those foods. Then we talked about the MMC, so the migrating motor complex, which is in your small intestine. So we think of that as the street sweeper who comes through between meals and kind of, you know, sweeps away the debris and cleans up what was there and kind of heals the gut. So that's one of the reasons why, especially for those of you with chronic gut issues, we want to try to avoid snacking between meals. We also talked about low stomach acid, so how stress actually shuts down our full digestive system, but especially our stomach acid production. And we need that acid, obviously, to digest our food, but it's also a barrier to prevent this dysbiosis or bacterial imbalance from developing. We also talked about how sleep, so stress impacts sleep. And I didn't fully connect the dots there, but obviously when we're not sleeping well, they've actually done research and shown that lack of sleep will worsen chronic gut and IBS symptoms directly. But indirectly, it's going to cause more cravings and low mood and low energy. What do we want to do when we have low mood and low energy? We reach for carbs and treats, right? So again, it's that vicious cycle. We're having those indulgences, we're feeding the bad bacteria. And actually, there's a lot of research too showing that just having this dysbiosis, whether or not you're stressed at all, having those bugs in your gut directly impacts your sleep cycle and your ability to have a good night's sleep. That's pretty crazy stuff. So they're actually impacting your ability to sleep. And one of the reasons why is, well, there's two reasons I'll go over briefly. One is they're not allowing you to produce enough serotonin. So we know that, as we said earlier, up to 50% of serotonin, the happy hormone, is produced in your gut. But serotonin is actually converted to melatonin. And melatonin, we know we need that to sleep, right? To have a good night's sleep, a deep sleep, and a restful sleep. So if we're not, the bacteria is not producing these cofactors and these building blocks to allow our body to make serotonin, which gets converted to melatonin, then we're not going to sleep well. The other factor there is that having this dysbiosis, as we talked about the interaction with the immune system, right? We talked about that earlier. And when your immune system is chronically activated, especially if it's an inflammatory activation with certain chemicals called cytokines, that is going to cause inflammation. And that inflammation, especially things like histamine release, will prevent you from getting a good night's sleep. So it's kind of, again, a vicious cycle, right? So we're doing what we can. I hope you guys got a lot out of this, and I hope it inspired you to do what you can to manage your stress levels and get yourself into that rest and digest parasympathetic mode to allow your body and your digestion to work optimally. So do that more often. Again, obviously we can't avoid stress. I don't want you guys, DMing me saying, what am I supposed to do? Life is stressful. I'm like, I get it, right? We can't avoid it. It's going to happen, but we can do everything we can in terms of our lifestyle and our choices and our routines to manage that stress so it doesn't impact our gut health and ultimately our mental health, our immunity, because it's all connected, right? So if you guys have any other questions, do let me know. I do want to let you know that we are less than 10 days away. So May 15th, I am launching my new course. I'm really excited. So it's an 8-module course. I wanted to kind of make a way for people to work with me or start working with me that's more accessible. So first of all, it's all online. It's also less than the price of one treatment session with me. So it's very affordable. And it's also going to be not just this modules and this, online course learning on your own, but it's also going to be a community, a Facebook group as well. So you're getting this ongoing daily support because I really understand that when you're first making these changes to your diet and your lifestyle and you're just feeling overwhelmed with all of the information that's out there, you have a lot of questions. I often have a lot of clients with a lot of questions and they're just feeling overwhelmed and they just want some extra support. So that's purposely why I built this Facebook community to have you guys in there to get daily support, right? So the course is launching on the 15th. I hope you guys will join me. It's super affordable. I am going to be increasing the price after the 15th. So if you want to get in at the early bird pricing, do sign up. The link is in my bio. And I really just wanted to make it clear kind of who this course is for and what it's about. So it's not going to be, the course that fixes everything, especially if you've been struggling for years. What it is it's a course to help you understand exactly what's happening in your gut, why you have these symptoms, and that you can do something about it. And you're going to make this action plan to take the next steps in your healing journey, right? Because we have to understand that gut healing is really a journey. And then we have to understand the root causes, right? We're talking about avoiding Band-Aid solutions, like taking random supplements you find on Instagram, and not just, having your doctor tell you, oh, you have IBS, you just have to live with it and you have to like avoid these trigger foods kind of thing. We can't live like that forever, right? There is a solution, and IBS is a functional disorder. So I just want to make that clear for you guys. I think I posted on this already, but I want you to know that because the reason the doctor can't find anything wrong with your gut is because there's nothing physically and structurally wrong with it. They can't find anything on these tests that they do because there is nothing actually wrong with the tests that they're doing. What is wrong with your gut is it's not functioning properly. So we talked about, not having enough digestive juices, or it's not moving properly and working the way it's supposed to work. And or you have this bacterial imbalance or overgrowth. And that is not something that doctors are currently testing for. I hope one day our medical system will catch up, because this is fairly new science and they will start testing for your microbiome. But in the meantime, it's people like myself and naturopaths that do test for things like bacterial overgrowth and imbalance using stool tests. So we're going to talk a lot about what's causing your chronic gut issues, these root causes, and what exactly we can do to heal that inside the course. And you're also going to learn a holistic approach. So I often get people coming to me being like, okay, just tell me what supplements to take, tell me what to eat, and like expect it to be fixed right away, right? Unfortunately, it's not that simple. And I want people to know that we have to actually build a kind of gut-friendly lifestyle in order to truly heal. Because as we talked about today, we've already gone through all these things we talked about showing that how much stress impacts the gut, right? So sure, you can do a low FODMAP diet, you can cut out sugar, you can take all these gut healing supplements. But if you're not exercising, you're not sleeping, you're not managing your stress, you're not connecting with loved ones, you're not going to heal. Your whole body works as a whole system. It's an ecosystem. All parts are connected, and we have to address all of these factors to truly promote healing. The really interesting thing that I am going to touch on inside that course, and we're going to have some special guest speakers in master classes as well, is the physical treatments you can do. So part of my own gut healing journey, even more recently, was adding some of these treatments in. So I've always gone for massage and chiro for other purposes, but I actually had no idea until more recently how much they impacted my digestion. So especially for those of you who have had abdominal surgeries or any kind of surgery that might have left you with scar tissue or adhesions in your muscular system in your abdomen, that will cause gut symptoms. And you can do all of the healing you want with someone like myself, with diet and supplements, but if you're not addressing that potential scar tissue and adhesions in your abdomen, that physical structural issues, you may not get full symptom relief, right? So I'm going to be talking about that and having some guest speakers in, including an osteopath and RMT. She's actually both. And we're going to dive into a lot of these different treatments. It's really, really cool. I'm going to talk about chiropractic as well, and how that, if you're I don't know the names of the different, what are they called in your spine there? But if your mid-back is seized up, that actually, your nerves that come out of there innervate to your gut here. So I've actually found myself, because I have mild scoliosis in my spine, that when that gets tight and pinched up, I get constant heartburn, constant. No matter how well I'm eating, no matter what I'm doing, the heartburn is not going away. I get a chiropractic adjustment. Sometimes I'll burp right after, and then the reflux is gone. It's pretty crazy. So these are the kind of things we're going to be diving into in the course as well, because I want you to understand all of the aspects of your body, your brain, and your physical body, and how they all work together to help you heal or prevent you from healing in I guess, many people's cases. So I hope you'll join me for this program. I'm really, really excited for it to launch on the 15th. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to shoot me a DM, and I will talk to you guys soon. I'm doing another live. I was going to do it Sunday, but that's Mother's Day. I just realized that. And so Monday is going to be my next live, and I will see you guys then. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in advance. Bye, guys.